So blockchain, where does it lead us, Mukhtar?
Okay, I tried to put in my presentation three main things. It's a critical view on reality, but it's not from points that it is white or black, more like a foundation or trends that push people out of centralized systems. Second thing I want just to see is that there are decentralization trends beyond blockchain, beyond cryptocurrencies, that comes from other areas of our life. And third part of my presentation is my perspective on all these decentralization trends. It's a time frame, but when I say time frame, it's not that something is going to happen within this specific period of time, but we may see acceptance, general acceptance, and support for opportunity to change social order, our view of our interactions and transactions. Okay, so let me start with blockchain. Everyone is talking about blockchain, and why is blockchain here, right? And one of the most loud and widespread statements or opinions that it's here to kill middlemen. How many of us agree with that statement? Please raise your hands. Okay, 3, 4, 5. Anyone else here? 6. And let's just look at what does it really mean to kill middlemen, right? And the first issue would be to look at is why do we really rely on middlemen? What is a basic, universal, and most important element that pushes us in hands of middlemen? What is that? Any ideas?
Lack of time.
Okay,
So
what?
I have to delegate. I have to
Okay.
delegate my power because
Okay.
I don't have time to become an expert myself.
Great.
Lack of confidence and governance.
Confidence in governance.
Lack of knowledge.
Lack of knowledge.
Lack of trust.
Lack of trust. Great.
Abdication.
Application. Any other points?
Because they're there.
Yeah.
Laziness.
Yeah. It's a very good. It's a very good
Because
point.
they're there.
Yeah, it's a great point that they're there. They exist. And if we look really deeply on why we turn to middlemen, is a very fundamental thing is a trust. We don't go to bank without checking with our friends, with our colleagues, if this is a good bank. We don't go to insurance companies without prior research and checking if that trustworthy organization. And we do that with all our suppliers, with all our agents, in all our interactions, in all our transactions, whether it's Bitcoin or whether it's just wire transfer to another country. So we check first, is it trustful, right? Does everybody agree with that?
I think there's a degree of established nature,
Yeah.
therefore you almost don't have to trust. How many of us read the terms and conditions when you sign up for something on the internet? There's just a degree of, well, it must be okay, so I'll just tick the box.
Yeah, but this paper is actually well written, many pages, gives us some sort of belief that this is an established organization. And its first very basic characteristic is that it should be trustful, right?
Should be.
Should be.
But there's also a lot of regulation and government protection, particularly for consumers, to make sure that that is flown through.
Yeah.
So if you go through the system,
Check their license. Yeah. And again, this is the element. If they have a government's license, it adds to their trustworthiness, right? That's why, okay, so you are registered, you are monitored somehow, and I trust you. I'm going to work with you. So this is a basic, actually, element where we are on what we rely on, right? So, and if we go back to the history and where it comes from, we have these transaction management systems back from 17th or 18th century. And it was more involved with accounting, with record keeping, and so on and so on. That's where it started to develop. And that's where all these third parties were born and still exist. So they actually were formed on our 17th or 18th century perception of trust. All of these licenses, approvals, and all these kind of things that surround all this trust, that's what we have now in our heads. And that's what actually directs us on a daily basis when we choose someone to deal with, whatever it is. Trust. And it has specific characteristics. If it's financial organization, they should be licensed. Check license. Even if it's just travel agency, they should be licensed. You go and check first, do they have a license? Do my friends have any experience with them? Was it good or bad? Was there any failures, mismanagement, and so on? So that's where our current perception of trust comes from. It was formed for hundreds of years up to this day. And another interesting characteristic of these third parties that they always deal with data. Again, data management that refers back to 17th or 18th century. So this is actually foundations of our trust and how the whole trust system was built and attached to centralized systems, whether it's government, corporation, or whatever it else. So how do we feel about trust? Well, and trust is inseparable part of many basic human values and social standards, and include, like justice, peace as a condition for prosperity, love, reliability, equality, respect, human friendliness, responsibility, and many others. And usually we trust entities in institutions we deal with, and in most cases, they are good in delivering what they promised, right? But everyone knows that with whatever its organization, there's from time to time, something bad happens with organization. Either our personal details with banks were leaked, or government lost someone's laptop with several million personal data. Bad things happen. But over the long history of humanity, the essence of trust has been forgotten, bent, eroded, misused, neglected, abused, and exploited by institutions and entities. And very often, it's a matter of additional and continuous public concern. So we deal with that every day. We know that bank we go to, was not always perfect. But we accept that level of insecurity. Even it generates additional concerns for us, right? So this is a actually system we live in. Humanity was always in search for trust. And over the history, we know a lot of examples when institutions or entities betrayed people in their trust. That's what happens. That's a human nature. Even in personal relationships, we sometimes fail to do what we promised or keep our promises, right? And did we become slaves of our own sense of trust? Previous technological advancement made trust and security even more important and complex. Just look at the access to your online bank account. Sometimes passwords stolen, personal data stolen because there are hackers, there's bad people around, and these systems are not well protected. So we hear it on daily basis, and we kind of accustomed to that this may happen with my bank account too. Even they say that it's a very good, very advanced informational system, very well protected, and so on and so on. There is a still chance that my account can be hacked. Now these guardians represent very complex systems acting around the original value, which is trust. And we essentially don't add any real value to it, but simply put ever-increasing security wraps and layers over the original value. Which it does means, what does it mean? I can give you an example, for instance, with Canadian citizenship. Every country has a specific requirements, how you get your citizenship. And in Canada, you have to meet first residential requirements, which is you have to live 3 full years out of 4, and then you have to pass security check, which is even more complicated now. Then you provide application with a lot of your personal data, including all your travels abroad when you left Canada for even 1 day. And then you go to pass citizenship exam, and you often have an interview with his immigration or citizenship officer. And these functions actually were delegated by people to specific agencies to control. But what you now may face with Canadian citizenship is that they require 1 guarantor and 2 references from your immediate circle, friends, colleagues, neighbors, whatever, who know you from 2 to 5 years, which means that in order to provide higher security for Canada, government agencies just move this burden of doing their job well to other people. And that makes this citizenship issue is very complex. When I ask someone to be my guarantor or reference, it means that if I do one day something bad, even unintentionally, I'm just doing something really bad for my friends. And they may face, I don't know, maybe criminal charges because they voted for me, because they agreed to be my guarantor or reference, right? Should all citizenship issues should be that complicated? But it still doesn't help. Many people go through all of that because, just look from very extreme point. If I'm a terrorist in my mind, but I hide it to all officials, and all my circle is extremist, all my guarantors and references are extremists too, right? So how does it bring good for society? How does it eliminate chance that someone bad will be approved for citizenship? It doesn't help, right? So that's what I'm saying about layers and wraps around the original value, which is citizenship. And that was actually wrapped by layers, which does not guarantee that this value is still good. Does everyone get what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So where we are now, we actually is all over exploiting public concerns, worries, and fears spawning into building extremely complex national, institutional, and corporate governance systems consisting of myriads of middlemen, and very often it means having multiple guarantors for every single and even primitive transaction. As a result, trust becomes more and more expensive. And all people who are involved in these guarantor industries don't produce any real value. They kind of take abstract risks on their shoulders and get just money for that. And that's it. And that happens with insurance companies, with banks, with all of this. Well, for instance, in Toronto, I know that what some realtors are doing, they're producing fake income statements to help their clients to get bigger mortgages. And I know that some people have 5 or 6, up to 10 very expensive houses, and they don't have actually income enough to support the volume of credit they have or loans they have taken from different financial institutions. So they go to one institution with one statement, then they generate another fake statement and go to another. And because of there is a middleman between bank, realtors, and citizens, and banks, brokers, all of that bad stuff is hidden. And banks don't want to go there. They know about that, but they don't want to go there and check. It's openly written in major, journals and magazines, in the papers in Canada. But banks don't shake that industry. Why? Because of greed. Because they want these brokers keep bringing new customers and provide more and more loans. Where it brought Canada, it's 160% debt per one Canadian of annual income. One of the highest in the world. And banking industry or government doing nothing about that. There's a lot of talk. Nobody actually goes to take 10 applications and go through and check all of this documentation that supported this application for mortgage or loan or whatever. Nobody does it. So that's what I'm saying. We are paying as people who get these mortgages to all of these layers, but these layers don't add any value to the original product or service. That's a real state, and I believe that the same happens in many countries. And that's why mortgage crisis happened in US. And Canada is very, very close to that because 163% was in late 80s, just a couple of years before mortgage crisis hit Canada in early 90s. So even the previous history, experience, doesn't teach these large organizations and centralized systems to avoid this kind of bad things, collapses, crisis in the future. 25 years, everything is just written off, gone. We are getting into new crisis because we have a lot of layers. And banks actually interested more in getting new clients through brokers because they don't want to take direct responsibility for accepting fake income statements. That's the reality we face in many industries, in many suppliers, with utility companies and so on and so many. Whatever you do on daily or long-term basis in your life, you can find at least one supplier dealing with you who is doing this kind of stuff. And it doesn't actually add any value to trust we have to these organizations. This is why trust as a value or part of many other human basic values became undermined in centralized systems.
It looks like every country is not good. In China, it's same.
Yeah.
Yeah, every country is same.
It's interesting that that there's two parts to that. There's the organisations themselves turning the blind eye,
Yeah.
which is bad.
Yeah.
But we also rely on a regulatory system to help engender that.
Yeah.
So that is also surveillance. So there's two failures
Yeah.
before we even get going into the detail.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is a regulatory framework we want to trust is actually additional wrap or layers that doesn't add any value to the system we use on daily basis.
There's a more fundamental failure here, that the system doesn't recognize why somebody needs 6 houses. You know, it's very easy to distinguish one person buying 6 houses.
Yeah, this
So you know, the system's not meant for that. The system says, no, if you want to buy 6 houses, you can buy 6 houses.
Yeah.
But doesn't question why somebody would buy 6 houses through residential mortgages, not buy-to-let mortgages. Coincidentally, I was looking at some statistics out of Pakistan. I was looking at middle classes there, and the creditability of 45 million middle classes there actually outvalues the entire British population, because out of 220 million population, 45 million are middle classes who each own a home worth at least $100,000 in value without any credit on it. So if you transpose that to credit available in, let's say, a country like England, you know, it's a market that has a huge amount of cash available comparative to, let's say, you know, an advanced country like England. And it's just because, you know, the whole psyche is around, you know, buy it when you can, rather than buy it just purely out of credit because it's laid out for you and it's facilitated. I think, you know, so the fundamental failure is this hypothesis that you need to lend to consume, to continue your economy, to, you know, to spend and bust and spend and bust.
Yeah.
I think that cycle has to stop.
Yeah.
So that's a more fundamental failure,
Yeah.
not just in the
Yeah.
housing market, globally.
Across the-
Yeah,
Across the
absolutely.
globe.
Absolutely,
Which was
yeah.
the point you made earlier, wasn't it, about
Yeah,
being content?
and the worst part of that is that even when all of these kind of bad things discovered by government, by special agencies, secret services, whatever it is, no one gets punished, right? Have you ever heard about corporation being present or completely, dismissed, closed, liquidated because of their wrongdoing?
The news of the world.
Yeah.
Did anyone go to prison?
What we hear that after a crisis, dozens of bankers go suicide. But this is a very small portion of that, right?
So Mukhtar, take us through into how this is all going to change.
Okay. So what have they done to our trust is nowadays trust as a value looks like more liability, and now we are surrounded by pseudo trust, pseudo security, and pseudo democracy. More and more public resources are allocated to generating more fear, uncertainty, mistrust, and that subsequently leads to increasing number of security and trust solutions that are sold to us, on top of what we already have, on top of concerns and worries we have, they sell additional layers. In another example, just maybe not that big scale like a mortgage business, but on my personal level. I got airfares through my travel agency, and I was amazed with the number of different insurances they offered me after I finished the transaction on airfares. 10 to 15, including guaranteed seat in a plane. Can you imagine? So basically that means that airline that sold me, ticket does not guarantee me a seat in a plane.
Standing all the way.
Just it's mind blowing, right?
I think we all share with you the frustrations.
Yeah.
For the interest of time, Mukhtar,
Yeah, sure,
we
yeah.
might like to get
Okay,
to
I
the
will go.
solution
I
now.
will go fast. I mean, because we have a different people from different parts of society. I want to just get general introduction and go through that. So, can we afford the traditional trust on our extremely dynamic, fast-paced, interconnected, and integrated planet with more than 7 billion population? We can't afford spending enormous resources on trust. So that's where we arrived, right? So can we call it a race towards irrelevance of centralized trust? Is blockchain about a race towards irrelevance? And can blockchain transparencies and truth offer a better alternative to trust as we know it? These two questions are for, discussion after my presentation, and I would love to hear different opinions on that. So, and then I looked on decentralization in 3 particular areas, including citizenship, political systems, and economic development. So, what is happening today, and where we are headed? So decentralization trends in citizenship. What do I see beyond Bitcoin, beyond blockchain, beyond all these movements related to that? That more and more nations create tailored residency and citizenship programs to attract specific professionals and talents to support national economies. The latest buzz is around tech innovators and startups. So what does it mean for us? That sense of citizenship, that where you born, you grew, and you belong, it doesn't exist anymore. Just look at around this table, around this room, how many people were born in one country and now live in another country. See, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Citizenship became very fluid definition, very liquid. So one day you are a citizen of one country, next day you might be citizen in another country.
Yeah.
So it makes less and less sense to say, okay, I was born there, I grew up there, and I will stay there, right? Because most of us moved by differences in society where we were born, we grew up, by differences in views, by differences probably in economic opportunities. That's why we move outside of our original countries where we were born or grew up. That's why we change. And so second and third, or even more, citizenships is now an accessible option for more and more people as nations create favorable conditions for specific talents, specific professions. Emergence of e-residency programs, Estonia, which is another shake to citizenship as we know it. Because now what I can do, I can live in Canada, I can get Estonian e-residency, open bank account, business bank accounts there, become a taxpayer, and they offer me probably lower corporate taxation level, pay taxes there. But now that corporate tax have nothing to do with my main citizenship, where I live. So that it's disconnected. Your economic activity is disconnected from your citizenship.
Just one point that the Prime Minister of this country may disagree with you. So she recently said at I don't agree with her. She said at her party conference, and I'm quoting, "If you believe you are a citizen of the world, you are a citizen of nowhere." To which there was some backlash.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's a good. I mean, this is a good comment.
Yeah.
This is a view of centralized system,
Exactly.
right? But we, as people, make other choices because of, again, economic issues, because of beliefs, because of cultural difference, because of many other things we all have. And that's
And of course, if you're American, those of you who are American here will know that it doesn't matter where you live in the world, IRS will tax you
Oh, yes, they
wherever
will.
you are. You have to pay the tax to America as well as wherever you are. So they're your problem.
That's true.
But you have to pay, even if you give your citizenship back to America and say I deny it. For the next 5 years, you got to pay.
yeah, and that's why IRS have a
And sanction, let me tell you, the sanction.
Income
yeah. Yeah.
No, this is very real. I mean, my family are involved. So it's, Brandon, Chandler.
Yeah.
He has the same issue. So the sanction is the banks. If a bank does not declare back to America that they have an American citizen, a citizen right now on their books, the IRS will sanction the entire bank from the banking system.
Yeah.
So now we have a lot of Americans who not only have given in their citizenship, but also the banks who told Americans around the world, we don't want you, you've got 12 months to leave. So there are some serious sanctions.
Well, as with Article 50, the author of Article 50 the other day came out in the press and said, well, I authored it. He was an English guy, actually. But, of course, there are always two ways to leave a private members club. Either you use the system by which to leave officially, or you just don't answer the phone and stop paying subs, and eventually they'll realise that you left.
Yeah. Okay. Let me continue. Right? We have a certain time frame for our meeting today, so I have to follow what I was going to present and tell and share with you. So there's a growing interest to some libertarian and anarchist ideas, including, as you may all, most of you know, about Liberland, Big Nation, and development of even self-sovereign identity, and formation of informal communities in different countries where people just flock and do what they believe. It could be religious, it could be spiritual, but these are trends we need to watch closely, because all of these trends actually undermine centralized understanding of citizenship. So ethnical and cultural diversity is growing in most developed countries, which means that there is a mutual penetration of different cultures, and there is a rare. It's hard to find probably a nation where it's consists only of one ethnic group. It's very hard. It could be a very small country with, on somewhere on an island, and nobody is actually interested to live too far from civilization, right? But most developed countries experience complete ethnical and cultural mutual penetration. I mean, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, and other Indian, Chinese communities represented almost in all big cities around the world, right? And this is again reality. This is an ethnical, cultural decentralization. There is no more kind of centers where people tend to go and stay there. Again, for economic reasons, for cultural reasons, for other things. And the place of birth is the only immutable element of growing liquid citizenship. So basically what we have a place of birth. But it's not a guarantee that you will stay a citizen of the same place. Everything is open after your birth. Everything is open for change. So transitioning to decentralized citizenship, what I see as a perspective that centralized trust separated us from each other, and decentralized trust will bring us together again on a different level of interactions. First stage, and for first stage I mean it's from 5 to 10 years, we should see introduction of distributed censorship-resistant organizational models. Nations will introduce national blockchain identity registry, acceptable for any citizen-to-citizen or citizen-to-organization interactions or transactions. Second stage, which is probably in frame of 10 to 20 years, we will see signs or acceptance of nations when they start implementing unified global blockchain identity standards. And third stage is planetary blockchain identity, which will be based only on birth and a birth certificate, perhaps, that will be only your personal identity. And you will not have any passports or any identity documents on identity, except maybe proof of your driving skills and some others. So, and this would probably, at this stage, it would probably completely erase national borders for purpose of residence, travel, visits, etc.
Except the UK, after the recent.
We don't know what's going to happen in 10 to 15 years, right? Yeah. So maybe at some point, government will be just left alone with all of these changes happening without their participation.
Like dinosaurs.
yeah, like dinosaurs. At the end of blockchain, we should see governments and legislative bodies as the dinosaurs.
Yeah, they can be disintermediated as much as.
Yeah. So there are some decentralization trends in political systems. Developed democracies experience stagnation in their political systems and leadership. And recent US elections is a good example. I was not surprised with winning Trump winning these elections, but because there are my estimations why it happened. America was brought to its current emergency state in terms of national debt, economic development, and foreign policy failures by its political establishment. Trump doesn't belong to political establishment. He is a maverick. He is a crazy guy out of establishment. And this is why majority of voices switch to Trump, because they don't believe that their existing political establishment have enough capacity, ability, or power to change the country. That's why they put their stocks on someone completely different, with the probably last hope that this person will bring changes country badly needs for last 2 decades. That's my view why it's happened with these elections. But it's not as much concern as my probably view on why 330 million nation with one of the most advanced democratic systems had such 2 bad candidates to govern this country.
I really must please ask you to, can we focus on the future and blockchain?
Yeah, there's only 3 slides left.
Okay.
Okay. So what I believe in that, and there are some other factors. United Nations is not capable to manage global conflicts peacefully. Large political unions like European Union experience a lack of unity on key policies, and includes Brexit. Some ethnic minorities call for sovereignty. NATO has no consensus on equal funding for 15 years. Emergence of direct democracy in Iceland. That's what we see as a big events happened, and we should probably watch them very closely. So next, transitioning to trustless or decentralized political systems. First stage, again, it's 5 to 10 years. Blockchain adoption for voting in selected public and private institutions and entities. Second stage is blockchain adoption for conducting national, regional, and municipal elections. As a result, direct democracy replaces representative democracy. People have full control over public governance. Legislative bodies and governments are transformed into technical functions. Third stage is after eliminating armed forces, military budgets, and other aggressive social attributes, there will be no longer need to have national borders and have political institutions. And the final point, decentralization trends in economic development. And there are several of them, which include centralized global and national economic powers are weak, inability to manage the latest economic crisis, trade regionalism versus WTO. What I mean is TTIP and other agreements, regional agreements, economic nationalism, rise of sharing economy, FinTech is taking over traditional financial services, transformation of enterprise, which includes robotics, artificial intelligence, and more automation implemented on enterprise level, decentralization of workforce, disappearing of full-time jobs, and growth of self-employed part-time jobs, contractors, and freelancers. In the US alone, freelancers accountable for 1 trillion of GDP, or 1 billion of GDP. And it's just beginning. we have never heard about freelancers probably 10 years ago. Now it's a huge industry. Growth of liquid workforce, and that's what we already discussed, and boom of decentralized cryptocurrencies. So transitioning to decentralized economic development will look like that decentralized economics will disrupt centralized economics by distributing costs associated with trust. On first stage, it will probably include introduction of smart property, cryptographic activation of assets, decentralized domain names, legalization of cryptocurrencies, and DOs. Second stage is decentralized systems take over centralized national economic development and national budgets. Third stage, introduction of global economic development with two decentralized governance levels, planetary and local communities. So this is my observation and my perspective on three issues, including economic development, political systems, and citizenship. So blockchain is here to eliminate or significantly decrease the role trust plays in our daily and long-term interactions and transactions, provide better support to our freedoms of possession, trade, and entrepreneurship, speech of truth, expression of vision, opinion, thought, and belief, movement. Counterpoise mendacity, falseness, and hypocrisy, make us free from fear, dominance, repression, danger, and frustration caused by centralized systems. I'm done.